Okay, hi everybody. My name's Michael Wright. I'm the canine behaviourist. I pop up here every now and again just to talk about dogs, really, generally about dog behaviour, how we can make our lives, our dogs' lives better, and maybe a little bit about dog training as well. First of all, Happy New Year to you all. Hope, in the words of John Lennon, this is going to be a better one. Um, so, what's prompted me to talk today? I A few days back, I saw an article on Twitter. Sorry, a paper article. I'll wake up in a minute. Um, and it was in, I think, the Observer and possibly the Guardian. And it was about the use of private fields to take dogs that have issues. Maybe they're aggressive to other dogs, maybe they're fearful of other dogs, or whatever. And the idea of these fields, and farmers are now renting them out, as an example, is to keep your dog away from any problems that might be affecting it and might be worrying it. Now, in principle, I'm not really a lover of this approach. It's okay to, in my view, and there are other views available, obviously. It's okay to keep your dogs away from things that worry it, but only while you're trying to work towards the point where the dog can cope with those sorts of situations. You can get them over their behavioural issues. But just taking them out of the arena, if you like, and not allowing them in, that's not a good idea. It's not a good idea because if you don't help a dog get over a particular problem, it's never going to do it. And the particular behaviours will become entrenched in your dog. And I've seen this many, many times. I often meet people and they'll have a dog on the lead. If they see another dog, they go in the opposite direction. And when you have a little chat with them, they'll say, "Oh, my dog is frightened," or "My dog is a bit aggressive," my dog's this," or whatever. We seem to label our dogs. You hear the reactive an awful lot, and I think it's an overused thing. So, what do I think we should do? Well, I've been doing this a long time now. Now, of course, I don't have every answer, and I'm not going to agree with everything everybody else does, and not everybody's going to agree with what I do. Now, I commented on this particular article on Facebook, and that's basically what I said. I wasn't attacking other people. I just basically said I think this is a thing that is overdone, and we should be really trying to help our dogs live in the world. And by doing that, of course, they have a full life. And don't get me wrong, I understand and I get the people's frustration when the dog that's far too lively comes up and gets in the face of their dog that may be a bit nervy, for instance. So I get that, and they get angry about that. Now, the simple fact is that you're going to get that sort of stuff. You're going to get that sort of stuff. But the response, in my view, isn't to then just keep the dog away. I mean, the article I read in the Observer, they cited one lady who I think she had a German Shepherd, and the German Shepherd was reactive. I don't know all its problems. So she took this dog where it could run and chase ball, and which is lovely. And she got to the point where she did a little bit of group walks. Now, group walks are another thing I tend to have a little bit of a bone of contention with. The concept of taking dogs in a group for a walk is, I think, a good one. But however, a lot of these group walks, again, not all, because they all differ, but a lot of them, the dogs are on the lead, and the dogs are on the lead all the time. Where I walk in a local forest, there are regular group walks, and the dogs are all on lead. They're all hyper excited. They're never let off the lead. They're barking at each other, and they're quite stressed actually. and it's quite apparent if you just stop and look at the dog's behaviour and their body language. But of course, most owners, well, that's unfair. Not most. Some owners don't fully understand body language and don't fully understand what they're looking at. Um, Therefore, they think the dog's having a good time. It's getting lots of exercise. It's walking. It is, but it's not doing what dogs should do to experience life fully. That's off the lead, where it's safe, mixing with other dogs, meeting other people, all different types of dogs, different types of people, groups of people, single people, big people, little people, children, etc. And it should do that. That's called socialization, by the way. I don't want to teach you this, okay? You all know that, I think. And that's something that should be done throughout the whole dog's life, okay? And to deny them that, for me, is failing our dogs. So, I then wrote a little piece about this, and just talking about the labelling of dogs, and we do that far too readily, I think. And once we've labelled the dog, then our behaviours are different. So, for instance, my dog is nervy. My dog's a bit nervous around other dogs, a bit frightened. So we put a vest on it, nice big yellow vest that says my dog's frightened. Therefore, keep away at all costs. Everybody keep away. Again, that's not doing the dog any favour. That dog will never get over being nervous of other dogs if we don't do something positively to help the dog get over its worry. And there's lots of things we can do. Again, I mentioned this in a particular little article, and again, I got the rather fevered response. Oh well, we'll throw the dogs to the wolves, and we'll just let them sink or swim. Well, there is a technique actually called flooding, which is really bad news. And flooding adopts a view is, let's say a dog's afraid of crowds. Well, to get it over that, we'll take it to Norwich City on match day and force it to be in a group of other people, a crowd. And the idea is they sink or swim. Well, of course, most dogs actually sink. It's a horrific thing to do to a dog. So I'm not suggesting that in any way, shape, or form. But a practiced method, a way of doing it slowly and easing the dog into a situation, that's the way to go. In the behavioural world, we call that desensitization. So if a dog is frightened of other dogs, in other words, it doesn't like strange dogs, or it's got a fear of strangers, if you like, we would introduce that dog to strangers and strange dogs in a very controlled manner. So they might see dogs at distance. They might learn when they see a dog a certain distance away, they can be relaxed and be calm. There's lots of things you have to do before you get to that stage. And then we work upon getting them a bit closer to dogs, and so the interactions are more manageable. And that's the standard way of doing it. And trust me, for most dogs, it works. There's always going to be the exception to the rule in any of these things, but for most dogs, it works. So it's not throwing to the wolves. It's thinking about the dog and trying to help it. I'll give you a very simple example. Today, I was in another set of woods, and I'd currently got a rescued lurcher who got took out of a very bad environment by the police. So after my other dog died earlier last year, we adopted this guy. We took him on, and he's a lurcher. So let me just show you. There he is behind me. Okay, very stressed dog, the lurcher. There he is. That's Clint. So Clint is a lurcher, and lurchers are bred for hair coursing generally. This guy was taken out of a large community, and I won't say any more about it because it's a bit delicate. And I think he'd been used for breeding. So I'm in the process of teaching Clint how to be a dog really, and how he can be relaxed, and how when he meets other dogs he doesn't have to chase them all, particularly small dogs. So he has a muzzle when he's out with me, and I generally allow him to meet other dogs in again a controlled manner, and that's good for everybody. That's good for Clint, and it's good for the other owners. It's good for the other dogs. So normally he'd be on the lead. If we'd meet a dog or a group of dogs, we'd allow the dogs um, to meet, and then I would gauge the consensus of all the other dogs, body language, what's happening, is it safe to allow the big fella off the lead, and if everybody's calm and relaxed, he comes off the lead. And he's allowed to run around with them if anybody wants to play. And again, keeping a close eye on the situation. If he starts to show any prey type behavior, so because of his DNA, he's a mix of hunting dogs really, and sight hounds that chase small things. So he can meet a small dog and he can meet a small puppy and he can enjoy their company and he can run around with them. But there are certain times when the small dog moves in a certain way across his field of vision where you can see his DNA sort of kick in, and he goes from play to a bit more like prey. Now, I'm aware of that and I keep a very close watch on that. And when I see that happening, he's back on the lead and he's calmed down again. So, back to the dog this morning. Met a small, I think it was probably a Cocker Spaniel, about 8 or 9 months old. Very lively, wanted to say hello to everybody. And we rounded a corner and Clint was off the lead, muzzled, and he saw this little dog, and they met in the middle basically. But this dog was moving in that certain way. So Clint, when he first met him, this happens over seconds really. When Clint first met him, it was okay, but then the dog moved a little bit too like a hare for him, and you can see him starting to chase the dog now in a different way, not a way we want him to behave. So again, back on the lead, he calms down. He then is able to meet the young dog, who's a bit frightened now, but then the young dog is helped to understand it's okay. And so the dog went from being frightened to, oh hello, I can say hello, and they met each other, they sniffed each other, they touched each other's snouts, good as gold, no problem whatsoever. Now, of course, the other thing that could have happened is Clint could have run around the corner, seen this dog, and rushed straight up to him, and the owner could have gone overboard. The owner could have picked his dog up and shouted at me and said, "Oh my goodness, that's horrendous!" and keep your dog away. It should be on the lead. Now again, I get that. But most reasonable people will see we're trying to do the best thing, both for my dog and for their dogs. And this couple understood that. And I quickly got Clint under control. Normally, as I say, if I see a group, he's on the lead. But not everybody gets it right all the time. There are some people that just don't give a damn and they let their dogs do whatever. Now, I get that and I understand. I've met plenty of those, trust me. I've had some of my dogs being ripped open by these types of dogs. So I get it. But as I said before, you can't legislate for everybody. And it's just plain wrong just to keep your dog away from it, just in case a dog might get a bit too lively. You've just got to be aware of it and try and manage it as best you can. So I continue to chat with this lady and her husband, and they know what I do for a living, and they actually said, "Well, so there is one thing with this dog. And say he's only about 8 months, just a youngster." And she said he's quite frightened of the road, and we live on a fairly busy road and quite a lot of traffic. Now there might be a number of reasons for this, and I said, well, what are you doing? And actually, these people were thinking about it, and they were working towards desensitizing the dog to the traffic without having approached a behaviourist or a trainer, by just thinking a little bit about it. So they thought, well, actually, the dog's a bit frightened of the traffic, so why don't we just try and make it a little bit easier for our dog? So they started to sit in the garden to allow the dog to see some traffic where it could be relaxed, and the dog is starting to improve. That's the first part of desensitization. So it's not impossible. It just requires a different mindset, I guess. Instead of being fearful what might happen, we have to try and be more positive. Um, I've seen places where they hide a dog behind a panel, and they have a number of dogs that are reactive again, and something is happening in the middle of the arena, and then the dogs are allowed to peek round every now and again. Now, standing watching this, I just saw a bunch of dogs that were rather stressed and rather fearful, doing their best in a very difficult situation, and there was just a better way of doing it. Um, I often see group sessions as well for these types of dogs. Um, Now, dogs that are reacting in a certain way to a certain situation, they're individuals, and they might be doing it from a totally different standpoint than the number six dog in this little group that you're trying to help. So I'm a great believer it's a one on one type thing. This you can only help them one on one. So I was rather I got a bit of a hard time. I'm a big boy. I'm 64 years of age. I'm a Falklands veteran. I've been shot at. I'm not very worried about harsh words. But we do seem to have lost the ability to take an alternative view, and then accept it without being offended and being attacked. You know, when I make a comment and I'm trying to help somebody, I'm not attacking people. I'm just simply trying to give them the alternative view, and a view from someone who's been doing this for nearly 40 years. Not always as a trained behaviourist, but in recent years as a trained behaviourist as well. So I've been helping many dogs over the years. Um, but hey ho, we all react in certain ways. However, I'll go back to the fields. Now, the use of the field, I just think is a bad thing. The dog isn't socialised. It's the same as people say to me, "Oh no, I don't take my dog out much, but I've got an acre field at my property, and he runs around there all day." Well, that's lovely. So he's running around, might be getting some activity and some exercise, but he's getting zero socialisation with people, other dogs, etc. And that's just a big no-no for me. So let me just get my train of thought back. So I think it's incumbent upon us really to think a little bit more. Most people, I think, love their dogs. I think some are possibly a little bit ill-informed, and they think they're doing the right thing, but they aren't necessarily. Um, I visited a family recently where they have three dogs, and the middle dog was beginning to experience some issues, being aggressive with one of the partners in the house, was being starting to become aggressive with other people, other dogs when it was out walking, and there were reasons for this, and the couple had been trying various things, not necessarily the right things, but at least they were trying, and eventually they came to the conclusion, "Oh, we need a little bit of help on this." So I bumped into this lady while I was out walking. I told her what I did, and she called me, and then I went and visited them, and we talked about dogs and why they do certain things and what we should be doing, and they found it quite illuminating, and they basically said to me, "Well, no, I hadn't really thought of it like that. No, I'm no genius, trust me, but I've studied it, and I've had many dogs over the years, but." Although I've had many dogs over the years, before I studied it properly and really got under the skin of dogs, I would do some things not quite right. Again, not deliberately, but just simply not knowing. Just simply that, not knowing. Um, so I think that's it really. I just wanted to get across the idea of removing a dog from a difficult situation initially is not a bad idea. Um, all dogs you can teach to relax and to be calm generally, and that takes some time, but there's a method of doing that. And only when you've done that and achieved that can you then go on to help the dog with any specific issues. So maybe it's fearful of strangers or people or other dogs. Maybe it's a bit aggressive in these situations. Maybe it's got dominance issues. Maybe it's possessive, etc. All of those things you can help them with. But you have to do it in a structured way. And it often requires some advice or some reading or some research. You won't find all the answers on Twitter and on Facebook, but there are plenty of professionals, very good ones out there, that'll help. Now, we might all do it slightly differently sometimes, but the basic fundamentals remain the same. So I think that's it. That's all I want to say today. Um, I don't apologise to anybody on Facebook if I've offended them, because that was not my intent. Um, if people choose to be offended by some of my fairly basic and simple views, I think really, that's okay as well. I'm a big boy, I can take it. But I even had one of the dog groups tell me I was sailing very close to the wind, and they basically were threatening to remove me from their group. Which, of course, I said, by all means, remove me. That's fine. I really am. I'm not here to offend people. I'm not trying to do that. And I'll say it again. I'm not trying to attack people, but if there's something I see and I have a view on it, well, I'll share it. Now, some people will get where I'm coming from, and others won't. But that's the way of the world. So that's it. I'll try and pop up a bit more frequently as things cross my mind. Just as a matter of interest, you may or may not be interested in this. Over the past few months, I've been working on a book which I've finally published via Amazon. It's a book about dogs, and it's called For the Love of Dog, and it's basically everything a dog owner needs to know about dogs, probably. And the idea of the book came to me one day. I wanted to talk about um, dogs, and their impact upon us, and how dogs have affected us in our lives. That's why, For the Love of Dog. So this book talks about the various dogs I've had in my life over the years, before I joined the services and after I left. Um, I have also sought some stories from other owners, and I've included that. I talk about um, basic training. I talk about common behavioural issues and how we may or may not address them. I've included a Q&A section from people that have asked me various questions over the years. I've put in a first aid course because I used to teach dog first aid as well, but everybody does that these days, but I used to teach that as well. Talked a little bit about the law. So it's a fairly complete book, and you might find it worth a read. But there it is. You can find that details of that on my website, which is listed below, or just pop on to Amazon. You'll find it there, and it's there in hardback, paperback, and as a Kindle book. End of advert. Okay, thank you very much for your attention, and thank you very much for listening to me. Whenever you may look at this at a later date, I'm not to the point where people actually tune in, but that's okay. Okay, I think that's it for now. Well, thank you for watching, and